Welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. This is Nick Wright on the Friday before championship weekend. Every morning, CC likes to come in, sit down, give us a little bit of advice, give us a way to start the show, put us on a good foot. I didn't understand what you said today.
He said, no reason to go home with a full tank of gas.
Yes.
Meaning, expend all your energy. Do everything you can to finish the week strong, because what's a full tank of gas going to do for you when you're at the weekend? That's what he meant.
Here's what happens. He speaks English, he translates the English, and then I interpret the English. So we're good.
No problem.
So let's dive into all that football.
Lord, deliver me.
Thank you, Nick Wright. We'll start in the AFC. Patriots heading to Kansas City for their 9th straight AFC title game. Two great teams, two great coaches, but the most anticipated matchup in this one is between the two great quarterbacks. One in his first year as a starter, the probable MVP in Patrick Mahomes. The other, arguably the best to ever play the game, in Tom Brady, playing for the right to go to his 9th Super Bowl. Both quarterbacks spoke about the importance of this game.
We got one game guaranteed this Sunday, but nothing beyond that. So, you know, whatever we got, it's just the best that we got, and it's that's how it should be in these games.
Playing against the Patriots, who are in the AFC Championship game every single year of my entire life, pretty much. And so it's definitely a huge game. We're excited for the opportunity, and we're glad we're getting to play, the best, and getting to compete against the best at this time of the year.
Going against a team that score a lot of points. They lead the league in sacks, strip sacks. You know, it's a good group. And I think everybody at every position has to play well. That's what championship games are all about. These aren't just handed to you on a silver platter and, you know, here you go, here's your trip to the Super Bowl. You got to go fight them out. We've been in a lot of games that come down right to the end.
See, there's a lot to take in here. There's the coaching, there's the venue, there's the weather, there's the game plans, and then, of course, there's the quarterback. In your opinion, what is the key to this matchup?
To me, there's a number of keys on both sides. I'll start with the Patriots. And for me, last week's game, I think, was a perfect illustration of how the Patriots, when they decide, when we say game plan specific, that means regardless of what they've done throughout the season, they're going about trying to win this game against the L.A. Chargers, how they go about doing that. They were very, very predictable. They got in very, very running formations, and they ran the football. They dared them to be able to stop them. When James White was on the field, they were very, very predictable. They were going to throw the ball to him in some form or fashion. Now the change of pace is you will know immediately if James Devlin, the fullback of New England's on the field, and Sony Michel is in the backfield, and they decide to throw the ball, they are trying to throw you off of all their keys. If James White's in the backfield and they decide to hand him the football, you're going to know that New England is totally off a script. They have self-scouted themselves, and they know that throughout this game, they're going to be totally unpredictable. I believe for Kansas City, it's very important for them to get off to a fast start, not only because it's the AFC Championship game, not only because they're a young team, but that's their style. Can they get their rhythm quick in the game? I wouldn't depend on, like they did in the week number 6 meeting with New England, trying to track New England down. Nick, I think you've pointed out Kansas City, and I don't think this is a negative. They are a front-running team. Yes. They are explosive, high-scoring team. They score more points than other teams do early. Their first 15 plays that Andy Reid has scripted out typically are very, very successful. So New England, I believe they'll be totally unpredictable. So when James Devlin and Sony Michel are on the field, I believe they'll do different things than what they've done throughout the season. During the season, Sony Michel's on the field, they run at 76% of the time. Bob Sutton, the defensive coordinator, he will be keyed into that. So I believe that right there in that Kansas City defense that plays better defense when they're at home, you need to realize that and bake that into the equation when you think who's going to win this game.
So I know people are going to focus on the two offenses, and they should. This is the best offense in football, 3rd best in NFL history in the Chiefs, and the 4th highest scoring offense in football. So to me, the key is which defensive game plan can confuse or get off schedule these prolific offenses. So for the Patriots, it's very simple. Can you confuse Patrick Mahomes. We've been hearing all year long, Mahomes, the more he plays, teams are going to have film on him. They're going to be able to give him coverages he hasn't seen before. No one's yet been able to solve this riddle. But now Belichick has the advantage of getting to face him for a second time. Belichick has more film on Mahomes than anyone who's played against him because this is obviously the latest in his career it is. And he knows that when they played in Week 6, they actually had success when they were in man-to-man concepts, and he torched them in zone concepts. In this matchup in Week 6, he was 13 of 15 against zone coverage. One of those incompletions was a drop. He had a perfect passer rating, nearly 200 yards passing. The interceptions he threw were in man-to-man, and when they got pressure on him was in man-to-man. On the flip side of that, can the Chiefs cover long enough to let the pass rush get home? I thought there was a very telling moment between Joey Bosa and Tom Brady in the Chargers game. There was a mic'd up moment, and Bosa came to the sideline and just said, man, he gets the ball out so fast. It's remarkable. Bosa was frustrated. Bosa said to Brady about him getting the ball out so fast, and Brady said, I got to. You're coming.
Right.
And so we know the Chiefs lead the NFL in sacks. Tom Brady mentioned that. He's very aware of it. Lead the NFL in strip sacks. We know they have an elite pass rusher on each edge in Houston and Ford, and up the middle in Chris Jones. That doesn't matter if Brady's getting the ball out in less than 2 seconds. So can you cover long enough to let the strength of your defense, its front 4 or front 7, get home? Those, to me, will be the 2 biggest keys in determining which great offense is able to maintain the season-long greatness it's exhibited.
I want to follow up on something you mentioned earlier on the unpredictability of what Bill Belichick might want to do. Nick earlier said if it was Tyreek Hill and not Kareem Hunt that was out of this Kansas Chiefs offense, this would be totally different. It is Tyreek Hill, and you've seen what Patrick Mahomes to Tyreek Hill looks like. How much easier is it for Tom Brady to be unpredictable at the line, knowing how quickly he can read defenses and how well he can quarterback that offense, as opposed to someone like Patrick Mahomes? If they try to do it, you know they're going to Tyreek Hill. You know that that's going to happen more than the run. How much easier for the Patriots to do that than for the Chiefs?
There's one reason why teams struggle on the road. It happens to be the crowd noise. Football is a game of communication. And when you can't communicate, it hinders your ability to play at your maximum. When Tom Brady's at the line, he will not be able to get to the whole playbook. It will be that noisy. He knows that. They have an abbreviated playbook. There's a reason why the greatest franchise that we know, the New England Patriots, why they struggle on the road. And this year's team has struggled more than any of the other championship caliber teams. So to think that that's not going to happen in this game, it is going to happen. And he's not like Patty Mahomes. Patty Mahomes has far more options. His third option in Sammy Watkins is better than any receiver outside that's going to play for New England. So that's the reason why you want home field advantage. That's why the crowd for Kansas City becomes very, very important, because they make you rush. You can't hear. There was a time when I played Little League football, and there was a guy in my neighborhood who grew up in a housing project. His name was Jerome. And Jerome was deaf. Jerome wanted to play football. He was a great athlete. But the reason why he couldn't play football was because he couldn't communicate. So one year we talked to the association and allowed him to play, but he could only be drafted on my team. And the reason why he could only be drafted on my team was because I was the only person that could communicate with him. I had about 2 months of training in Boy Scouts, and I had that hood sign language. So Jerome, I just knew how to communicate just being in the neighborhood and everything with him. He played 1 season with him because I could always communicate. I had to always be on the field with him, and that will affect Tom Brady. That's why you fight for home field advantage. That's why the regular season becomes important, so that you can run your offense like Patty Mahomes is going to be able to do, where there's not going to be a peep compared to what Tom Brady, and it affects your ability to run your whole offense.
And there's 2 very clear problems, one for each team going into this game. For the Chiefs, the big problem is they have been bad against the run this year, and they have been awful as far as stopping running backs from catching passes out of the backfield. Sony Michel has shown the ability that when he's given the opportunity, he can be a high-level NFL running back And James White is turning himself into one of the most prolific pass-catching running backs statistically in modern NFL history. The problem for the Patriots is a numbers problem. If you're going to have two on Tyreek Hill at all times, if you're going to have one of your rushers bump Kelsey and you're going to cover Kelsey, if you can't leave Sammy Watkins alone, you're running out of people. Are you going to rush only 3 and give Pat Mahomes all the time to either roll out in the pocket? We know that they want to get pressure up the middle and set the edge. So there's 4 guys there, 2 guys on Tyreek Hill. You only got 5 players left. And that's why the Chiefs having this multitude of weapons is so difficult to contend with. They were the 3rd highest scoring offense in NFL history, despite Sammy Watkins missing half the year. Now they are the healthiest they've been all season long. This presents real issues for anybody. The home field advantage, the ability to communicate everything pre-snap, is obviously the critical piece of this game.
All right, we got 500 more angles to tackle in this game, and we will do so over the next 3 hours. Coming up next, though, let's talk NFC. Are Jared Goff and the Rams in for a rude awakening at the Superdome? That's next on First Things First.
This Sunday, tune in to Fox to see the new trailer for John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum. And away we go.
Don't miss the new trailer for John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum, in the 2-minute warning of the first half of Sunday's football game on Fox. Nobody more excited about this than this morning in the meeting when we said we were going to talk about this than Nick.
I hope they keep making John Wick movies for the rest of my life. Every 2 years, make a new one, Keanu. Now, listen, that means you're going to have to survive this one again, Mr. Wick. Part 1, I was a little nervous near the end. Part 2, it looked like you were drawing dead. But this is a great series. I love it. I didn't even know this was happening right now.
Great. That'll be fun.
This is exciting. This is an all-time action series. I think it's a comic book. I don't know about the history of it. I just know Keanu Reeves seems unkillable, and it is exciting. Jenna, you and I can go together.
We will go together, and I know that Mr. Keanu Reeves, taking a page out of my book, did all his own stunts for this movie.
Page out of my book.
So let's just move on.
What book is that?
It doesn't matter.
Jenna Wolfe, action movie hero. What up, C?
We'll get to Drew Brees in a second, but first,
It's Friday.
a couple of plays from last night. Nuggets Bulls. Paul Millsap destroys the whim with the vicious putback throwdown.
Look at Paul Millsap. This is not
Great
usually
timing.
a part of the game that you see from him.
He's really got an underrated career. Good basketball player, high basketball IQ, great in the locker room, good
and always on winning teams.
Hornets Kings. Rookie Miles Bridges slices through the Kings defense before unleashing the dunk.
Coach Izzo's boy, very, very athletic. Needs to develop some other parts of his offensive game, but still a very promising prospect.
Absolutely. Good body, too, for a young player. Put him together well at Michigan State.
All right, finally, college hoops. Projected NBA draft lottery pick John Morant showing off the high flying ability.
Man, what's wrong with him?
Ooh.
How'd he get to Murray State?
This is what I'm saying. The top 6 of the draft, it's going to be Duke, Carolina, Indiana, Murray State, Duke. Like, the sophomore at Murray State, who might be the best point guard in the country.
Top 5 pick projection.
Moving on to the NFC title game, Rams heading down to New Orleans for a rematch against the Saints. Last time these two teams played, they combined for 80 points. The Saints won, handing the Rams their first loss of the year. These teams know each other, they compete hard against each other, and according to Drew Brees, they also respect each other.
They're a phenomenal team, and they had a great season. Obviously, we played them, mid-season, and it was a hard-fought game on both sides of the ball. But I think we had a feeling then that obviously we aspired to be in this situation, and I think we all had a feeling that they were going to be the team that we might face again, and so here we are.
All right, Nick, what are you expecting from this game?
I don't know if it's going to be 45-35 with 80 combined points, but I do think it will be a high-scoring game, both teams into the 30s, and I think it's going to come down to this question. Can the Rams get the Saints off the field? And with this Saints team, that does not mean stopping them on third down necessarily. That means stopping them on fourth down. This is a big discrepancy in this game. The Rams, one of the three worst teams in the league at converting fourth downs. The Saints, one of the best teams in NFL history at going for and converting fourth downs. 15 of 18 this year on fourth down conversions. And so it's one thing, you get a stop on 3rd and 6, you hold them 5 yards, oh, they threw short of the sticks also. That don't really mean much when you're playing the New Orleans Saints. So the flip side of that is the Saints have some banged-up offensive linemen. Andrus Pete's playing with a broken hand, didn't play well this past week, had 4 penalties. Dealing with that broken hand he suffered in Week 17, had surgery the following week. We know how dominant Aaron Donald is. We know how well Sue played the next week. So in those critical, be it 3rd and short or 4th and short situations, can the Rams front beat the Saints front? I think in a game this close, this tightly contested, it comes down to something that potentially that specific, that much in the minutia.
If I'm going to get specific, I'm going to go to a group that I believe is probably the least talked about group that we've seen out of all 4 of these teams we talk about. And Coach Mangini always talks about with inside an NFL organization, you want continuity. You want continuity in the front office, you want continuity in the coaching staff, and you love continuity in the locker room or within your units. There is no continuity like the LA Rams offensive line. There was a number of teams and quarterbacks that tried to revamp their offensive line over the last couple years in the league, and they've had tremendous success. Seattle, they did it for Russell Wilson, totally changed, led the NFL in rushing this year. Andrew Luck's career was resurrected, him getting back healthy. They changed their mindset, who they were going to put on that offensive line. It's really, really helped them. We're very, very fortunate because there's a lot of signs from this, high scoring and all that, but the 4 teams we're watching, they all got good offensive lines. It would be hard to argue that the LA Rams don't have the best. 2017 offensive line played all 16 games. This past regular season, offensive line intact, played the whole season together. Can they have that type of run productivity and dominance that they had over the Dallas Cowboys? Because no one would think that the Rams are going to be able to run for 200 yards. So we give all the backs the credit. All we talked about, man, C.J. Anderson, that little butterball. And then we talked about Todd Gurley, how outstanding he is. But we didn't mention this offensive line. I believe this offensive line will play a mark in this game, especially their left tackle. Unique story in Whitworth. They brought him over from Cincinnati. We had video of him win his first playoff game last week in the Coliseum.
With the family.
After 7 losing attempts in Cincinnati, he wins his first game. He's going back to Louisiana, which is home. He played his high school football there. He played 4 state championships in that building, won 3 state championships, then went on to a great career at LSU where he won a national championship in that building. So that offensive line and their left tackle, he's probably going to get some home cooking there for those big guys. So I believe that offensive line and their ability to be able to knock that defensive line back, and because you mentioned Sheldon Rankin, they're down. So can they wear them out over the course of that game? I think that Sean McVay, that's a huge part of the game plan when they go to New Orleans, Nick.
And that's why Jared Goff, he can't be caretaker in this game now. Jared Goff, since the last time they went into a game saying, you know what, if we're going to win, Goff's going to have to play great, he played really well. The Chiefs game, 54-51. But since that Chiefs game, Jared Goff has 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. And they have just been asking him, rest of the way, let's not crash this car. Running game's going great. Offensive line's been great. Defense has been better. Let's just take this thing home. I do not think that can be what they ask of Jared Goff in this game. I know you believe in Jared Goff more than I do. I'm in the minority. All the numbers say he's top 10 quarterback in the league. His draft profile says he should be a top 10 quarterback in the league. I want to see Goff in this game because I believe in their offensive line. We know that Gurley's going to be the #1 part of the Saints' defensive game plan, and we know McVay can scheme guys open. Can Jared Goff, he doesn't have to match Drew Brees, but can he get some 10-9 rounds instead of 10-8 rounds against one of the greatest quarterbacks ever? That, to me, if he can, the Rams have as much talent as anybody in the league. If he can do that, the Rams can go into the Superdome and win this football game.
What about the coaching, C? Two Seans, but very different points of their career. One has seen it and done it. One is sort of taking all the information in it and trying to sort of innovate the role of head coach. How do you see, how much of this is going to come down to out-coaching the other team?
I think it's a great question. I think that you make a great point as far as them being at different points in their career. But in reading articles, following both of these teams, there is a great deal of respect from Sean Payton to Sean McVay and Sean McVay to Sean Payton. They say they try to copycat each other's offense. They steal the plays. They admit it. Most coaches won't admit it. No, I drew that up. No, they're like, no, I watched them. Sean Payton says, Sean Payton watches every touchdown scored in the NFL every week, and he makes sure that he watches the Rams. So because he's looking at these plays to say, man, how can I duplicate a formation or a play? And one of his favorites is duplicating plays that the Rams and Sean McVay have designed. So what I believe is important in this game, though, Jenna, for both these coaches at different parts in their career, who can pull off their trick play early? Because whoever can do that, because then you put the other coach in a predicament. Both of these coaches are going to gamble for it. We've seen Rams special teams. They'll run a fake. They'll have their punter throw the ball. We saw last week in Sean Payton, they scouted out the Philadelphia Eagles and they decided in the Chicago game, when Fletcher Cox is on the field when they're punting, those are the only plays he's going to take a break. So they had the film of all the plays he was there, and they pulled off that fake that we believe.
Right,
Nick,
at him.
You called that as the play of the game in last week's playoff game, but they had scouted it out, and both of these coaches are looking for that opportunity. Who can pull off their trick play early? It puts a lot of pressure on that other guy. Do I call it just because he did to try to show up at that? Or from a strategy standpoint, because I believe both of them have several trick plays in the game plan.
I think the trick play thing is a great point with these two teams specifically, because we've seen Johnny Hekker, the Rams punter, throw the football and throw the ball well. Taysom Hill been on the field all season long. Remember that play 8 weeks ago when they had Taysom Hill, Drew Brees, and Teddy Bridgewater on the field, and we wondered if that was setting something up? Every Super Bowl, when these Super Bowl prop bets come out, one of the popular ones is over under 2.5 people throw a pass, which essentially is, are you going to run a trick play? You're going to have a wide receiver throw a pass. That if that bet's available in this game, I'd take the over. I don't know. I think you might have 4 different people throw a pass in this game, whether it's Todd Gurley, it looks like it's a sweep. We know he can throw the football, throwing it like Edelman does for the Pats sometimes, whether it's Taysom Hill, which we know he can throw the ball, or Rams punter Johnny Hekker.
I don't know what Sean McVay's going to do under the pressure. But I've seen Sean Payton under the pressure.
Yeah.
And I've seen coming out from halftime from a kickoff in his Super Bowl win, what did he do?
Onside.
Onside kick. So I know he's got the guts to be able to do it. When you're at home, it's a lot easier to pull that off because you still have the crowd there to be able to offset the momentum. Will Sean McVay be able to have that same type of impact as Sean Payton?
All right, free gambling advice. Take the over on more than one person throwing the ball.
More than 2.5. More than
free
one
gambling
person.
advice. Don't gamble on Nick Wright's picks.
There you go. That's better. Coming up, is Robert Kraft right that Tom Brady is the best football player of all time? That's next. This is First Things First. Got a big night of college basketball heading your way tonight on FS1 with action from the Big Ten and the Big East. First, Maryland battles Ohio State at 6 Eastern. Then at 8:30, it's Xavier facing off with defending national champion Villanova. College basketball tonight on FS1 and the Fox Sports app.
I got a little Ohio State Villanova parlay, get my weekend off to a good start.
More betting information. Time for Say What? Rams head coach Sean McVay gets a lot of attention for being a young offensive guru. However, he has a lot of help on the defensive side of the ball in Wade Phillips. Yesterday, Phillips talked about why he decided to join McVay's coaching staff. Say what?
Well, it was mostly my son Wes who worked with him, with the Redskins. So Wes told me all about him. I'd met him before, but Wes told me all about him and all the great things about him. Wes had already said he thought he was going to be a great head coach, and he has great command of the room and all those things. And so it was really from Wes. Now Wes is a young offensive coach that knows Sean McVay, just if anybody's looking for another head coach.
The family business.
Bum Phillips to Wade, West tight ends coach in Washington.
Wade's one of my favorite coaches to ever be on the staff. I mean, he's a hilarious, great teacher of football, gets along with different personalities. There is no millennial, no age gap between him and any generation. And if you ever fly on a flight with him, man, he's the worst. He's like, when the plane takes off, he counts down from 10 every 10, 9, 8. Then you get to 1, 0. Oh, we've cheated life again. He's like, 90% of plane crash happened in the first 10 seconds. Like, well, thanks.
See, you know, I've talked about my partners before you, my television or my radio partners before you. I once did a week of radio shows with Wade Phillips, him as my partner.
Yeah, it got canceled.
Got canceled. You're unbelievable.
Time for your AT&T wake-up call. Big win for the Lakers last night. They took down the Thunder in OT behind 32 points at a Kyle Kuzma. Nick, you surprised the Lakers pulled this one out?
Hell yeah, I'm surprised they pulled this out. They were getting whooped in the first quarter. Then they played very well there throughout the second through fourth quarters. But then I thought they blew it at the end of regulation when Lonzo fouled Russ to allow him to force overtime. But then they dominated overtime. That is an outstanding road win for the Lakers with no LeBron and no Rondo.
That's like finding money on the side of the road, man. Wasn't expect. We were counting this one already as a loss. We were counting up what position would they be in when LeBron came back. We were hoping for around 10th. Big win for them.
The long-awaited Boogie Nights finally upon us. See what I did there? Boogie Cousins expected to make his Warriors debut against the Clippers. It'll be his first game since rupturing his Achilles playing for the Pelicans nearly a year ago. CeCe, you're the injury expert here. How long do you think it'll take Cousins to get back to full strength?
Oh, it won't take him that long. You've seen him in the workouts being able to shoot his jump shot. And when you're playing with Golden State, I mean, how hard do you have to play? I think the first 10 games are very, very important just as far as style. They've never had a center like him who can score the basketball. So what type of pace will they play at? How will they get him involved? And if you're on the opposing team, I would attack him on the offensive end. I would make him play defense. I would make him get down in the stance and move laterally. Typically, there's still some stiffness in that Achilles. That's what I would try to attack.
Teams are going to try to pick and roll Boogie to death and see how well he can move. But I thought the point you made about him earlier in the week, which is when Steph came back from his groin injury, they made a concerted effort.
Yes.
Let's get Steph back on track that he was pre-injury. When Clay was in a slump, they made a concerted effort to get him involved. Will you expect them to do something similar with Boogie? Make him feel at home?
Yeah, they want to see that ball go through the bucket. They're going to get him a couple good looks.
All right, back to the NFL now. Marcus Peters made some headlines after the Saints-Rams matchup, saying, quote, he and Sean Payton will have a nice bowl of gumbo together if the teams matched up again. Both Peters and Payton said their gumbo-related tiff is now behind them. Nick, who's going to have the last laugh in this one?
Well, listen, I think the Saints should win the game, which would give Peyton the last laugh. But it should be noted, Peters and Talib both got hurt early in the year. Talib went on the shelf. Peters played through it. Those first 10 weeks when he's playing through the injury, he played really poorly. Since he's been healthy from week 10 to now, he's allowing a passer rating of around 64. Like, he looks like the old Marcus Peters again. So they didn't get a healthy Marcus Peters in the first matchup. They're getting one in this matchup.
Yeah, and they're going to have Talib. So both of them on the field, I believe, gives that secondary of the Rams a little bit of an edge. Saints can't be one-dimensional. They can't throw it to Michael Thomas 20 times. They're going to have to be able to get Teddy Ginn and others involved. I believe this is one of the great matchups that we're going to see this weekend. Saints wide receivers versus Rams secondary.
That touchdown right there is the last touchdown pass Marcus Peters has allowed this season.
Yeah, but that interview won't be his last spicy one.
Finally, the Saints' high-powered offense facing off against the Rams' defense. And Ndamukong Suh said the Rams are focused on stopping the Saints' elite backfield of Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram. See, whose backfield is more important on Sunday, the Saints or the Rams?
Well, Nick brings up a point as far as Jared Goff in this quarterback, the four quarterbacks, even though I believe he's got good throwing talent and he's got a very good arm and great release and great timing, he's got the least talent of all the four quarterbacks. So you can't run that offense without their running game. You can't run that without Todd Gurley and the force for which they try to get him running downhill. On the other side, Drew Brees, he's been more effective at this point in his career the last 2 years. Why? Because they run the ball. Both of these offenses are set up that their running games are vitally important. I just believe with the injury to Sheldon Rankin, that offensive line of the Rams, it becomes more important to try to wear down the Saints. When you come into an offensive huddle, there's two different types of verbiage. There's one verbiage, which is very, very long for a pass play. typically the running plays are very, very easy. Let's go. Scat right, 32, blast. You don't need a whole bunch of communication to be able to do that. It's just a matter of trying to move guys off and get onto your assignment. So it's important that the Rams are able to quiet down that crowd. So I'll have to go to the lean of the Rams backfield because of the style for which they're trying to play.
And that's in regards to when the running backs are actually running the ball. But when the running backs are split out, Justin talking about these matchups all week, and I want you to expand on this, so I'll cede my time to you for a moment. The Kamara out of the backfield as a receiver, I think you believe could be the biggest key to this entire football game. What Kamara does catching the ball, whether it's out of the slot, whether it's coming out of the backfield and running or wheel route, that could be the Saints' biggest edge in this entire match.
Just imagine if Odell Beckham, if they lined him up in the backfield behind the tackle, quarterbacks in shotgun. Imagine Antonio Brown lined up in the shotgun next to the quarterback, and he's running the route on a safety and or a linebacker. The weakest part of the Rams defense are their linebackers that they play. And to me, this is the mismatch of the weekend. Can you get Kamara in space on these linebackers and or on these safeties? I don't believe there's an answer. I believe on certain plays, they're going to bracket Michael Thomas and they're going to bracket Alvin Kamara coming out of the backfield. That's the only way they're going to be able to stop him and slow him down.
Which is why having Ted Ginn back is so important, because you bracket both those guys. Ted Ginn, whomever on him, is going to have no help, and Ted Ginn, till he's 50 years old, is going to be able to run a straight line as fast as just about anybody in the world. I do believe Gurley has to be great. He's the best player on the Rams offense, and C.J. Anderson, he's 120, 170, 140 as far as his yardage production over the last 3 weeks. Can he, behind that excellent Rams offensive line and an injured Saints front, can he be effective in wearing them down? But Alvin, what Kamara and Gurley can do as catchers of the football out of the backfield, that could be the best weapon each of these offenses has.
It should be noted, the Saints have not given up a 100-yard rusher since week number 17 of 2017.
Right.
All right, so one of the best in the league as far as keeping backs under 100.
All right, let's get back and talk about the Patriots now. It's become almost an annual ritual to wonder if this is the last iteration of Brady and Belichick. They can't possibly come back and do this yet again next year, can they? We seem to always ask, and we seem to always be wrong. So they get set to play in their 8th straight AFC championship. When asked about the two cornerstones of his franchise, Robert Kraft did not understate how they should be remembered.
Definitely the greatest player of all time, not just quarterback, in my opinion, because he's such a leader in the locker room. And for someone double the age of some of the players to be able to lead like that and connect like that and have the work ethic that he has, and at the same time, so pleasant to be around. It's, you know, I'm really the luckiest guy in the world.
What do you think Bill's legacy would be?
Oh, he's the GOAT of coaches, just like our quarterback is the GOAT of quarterbacks. I mean, and no one can dispute it. And the fact that our organization has been able to perform at this level in the age of the salary cap, you know, when everyone spends the same amount of money. So, look, I'm pretty proud that we've been able to keep him and our quarterback together for 19 years. Please God, it'll be 2 decades next year.
All right, Cece, what do you think? There's a lot that Robert Kraft said there about both his quarterback and his coach. And we were talking about this week, how unique a situation it is that these two have been so successful for so long in one place. And then you also add Robert Kraft to, and we don't talk that much about how important he is to this organization as well.
It's a great story, and it's a great story, and very, very rare you're going to be able to get these types of moments where you have the owner talking about a player. And to add to what he's saying as far as Tom Brady being the greatest quarterback and or one of the greatest players, Tom Brady should have the title as the greatest quarterback. Now, it's hard. I'm going to take the Michael Jordan approach and say it's hard to compare players that played in different eras. And to say that Tom Brady was as good as all the players that played in the 60s, he was better than Jim Brown, like that would be hard for me to argue that, what Jim Brown meant to the game of football. And I can understand all his arguments as far as Tom, how long he's played, yes, his leadership, all that, yes, that would match up. But to say he's the greatest, I would just say there's a list of players that all should be included if you're ever talking about the greatest players ever. It should be Jim Brown, it should be Lawrence Taylor, Deion Sanders, and Tom Brady. Jerry Rice should be included. Those are the 5 players that I would say have made an impact on football like no other. So I won't say that one of them is the greatest of all time. And if I was to lean to one, I would lean to what we do in the Hall of Fame. We would lean to Jim Brown. Brady's made an impact on the game like we've never seen before. His ability to be able to lead young people in this new millennium, I think is very, very special, and people should add that to a skill.
The reason that basketball has the most vociferous GOAT debate is not just the LeBron Jordan stuff. It's because you play offense and defense. You got to guard multiple positions. You know what discussion doesn't happen? Who's the best baseball player ever? Because how do you compare Satchel Paige to Babe Ruth? That's what I feel is the weakness on having this discussion with football, is how can you compare the greatness of what Lawrence Taylor did, or even the only name you left off that I had jotted down is maybe Deacon Jones is in that discussion as well. But the first 5 you mentioned are the first 5 I think most people would, which is Rice, Brady, Brown, Deion, Lawrence Taylor. But they are doing such different jobs, and Brady's biggest attribute or biggest mark on his resume is the championships. But he is playing the position that can have the most impact on championships. Yep. Like there's what Deion won a bunch, obviously, but you are limited in your ability to impact winning compared to a quarterback as a corner or a pass rusher or even a running back. So I think it is inarguable Brady's the greatest quarterback ever. And with respect to Chuck Noll and Bill Walsh and Vince Lombardi and Tom Landry, I think it's becoming inarguable that Belichick is the greatest coach ever. But I don't think there is such a thing as greatest baseball player ever. There's greatest pitcher and there's greatest positional player. And I don't think there's such a thing as greatest football player ever, just because they are asked to do such different jobs, even if they were all in the same era.
Tell me what makes a coach the greatest coach of all time besides his record.
I think his ability over a long period of time to be able to communicate. Football coaches are teachers, and their ability to be able to teach football and teach life to grown men. That's what you have to be able to judge a football coach on. Yeah, you're going to judge it on championships, but then you go into the different eras. Belichick's been a part of 3 different decades, but they're different. How the salary cap, no free agency. Now we're in 60% movement on every team with the draft, all those things. I think he's done a brilliant job of changing from I'm going to be a defensive-dominated team for 10 or 15 years to I'm going to be an offensive-driven team for the last 10 years. So I think his flexibility and how he still teaches football is second to none.
And you mentioned Robert Kraft, and this sound bites obviously from Robert Kraft. And we've talked throughout the week about how Robert Kraft traded for Bill Belichick when that wasn't the most popular move. He was the owner of the team when they drafted Tom Brady, the famous story of Brady walking up to Robert Kraft saying, best decision you ever made. See, Robert Kraft is going to join you in the Hall of Fame one day. Like
he should be.
It's just a matter of time at this point.
If forget about the championships, but if he drafted Bill Belichick. Yeah. Bill Belichick was working for someone else. He said, I'm going to give you those picks for that guy. That's my guy. They drafted Tom Brady. Him and Tom Brady had a conversation the day after the draft. Tom Brady told him, I'm going to be the best draft pick you ever. And Mr. Kraft believed in him enough, all right, especially in those early years to develop a friendship and off the field. Yes, he should be in the Hall of Fame. He's a Hall of Fame owner. Top to bottom, you win games from the top. And that's how New England did it. With the Krafts, to Belichick, and into Brady. All of them very, very special.
It's a good conversation. All right, got to take a break. Coming up, what does Patrick Mahomes need to do to march on to Atlanta? That's next on First Things First. Every day, CC reminds us why he's here. Back here, first things first,
big
Super
man?
Bowl
Good job,
champ
big
Cris Canny is here.
How you doing, Jenna?
Cris Canny, do you know how important CC is in your life?
I know how important CC is in my life. Do you know how important he is in your life?
And if I don't,
sure?
he'll remind me,
Okay.
which is
I can
good,
take a
and I
segment
love
off if you guys want.
No,
you
this
good.
show
Stay
would
right here,
not
big
work
fella.
without
You're good,
you.
right here.
It is great to have you.
We do fine when Canny's in that seat. We're better right now, but we make do. Cris Canny fills that seat quite well.
Good seeing you, big fella.
My
Good
man,
seeing
I know what time it is, even if they don't know.
Man,
CC.
I
I know what it is.
Listen,
Handle my
everyone on the
life.
staff's
I got
scared
you.
of the man in the glasses, except for the man sitting across from
That
him.
is not true.
Oh, he took the glasses off. All right, let's do it.
What they
Start in
talking
the
about?
AFC, Canny.
Read that now.
We got some questions to ask you. Patriots heading to Kansas City for their 8th straight AFC title game. You got two great teams. You got two great coaches. But the most anticipated matchup in this one is going to probably between two great quarterbacks. One in his first year as a starter, the probable MVP in Patrick Mahomes. The other, arguably the best to ever play the game, in Tom Brady, playing for the right to go to his 9th Super Bowl. All right, there's a lot to dive into here. Let's start with what your opinion is on the key to this matchup when these two teams face off.
Well, for the Patriots, it's going to start with playing complementary football. All three phases working in concert in order to try to limit the possessions of that Kansas City Chiefs offense. Normally in a football game, you get the ball 11 or 12 times. It needs to look more like 9 or 10 offensive possessions for the Chiefs.
How do you do that, man?
Well, basically being able to have a ball control offense, being able to have sustained drives. And
Okay,
then
so eat up the clock.
Eat up the clock, winning the battle of field position. You know the Pats always look to give themselves an edge in the kicking game, and then defensively making sure that you dominate in the critical phases, third downs, red zone, making sure that you can control that and get off the field. So I think that's where the Patriots have to start in terms of their defensive game plan. They have to deny vertical entry for these Chiefs receivers into that secondary. They've got to disrupt the timing. They've got to get up in the face of Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. You've got to try to disrupt that chemistry that Pat Mahomes has with his receivers. So I think you'll start to see the Patriots utilize some disguises on the pre-snap stuff. And then, of course, with your coverages, I think they'll sprinkle in some two-man, some man-free, allow those corners to press those receivers for the Chiefs, try to disrupt that timing. I think that's where it has to start if you're going to try to slow down this Kansas City Chiefs offense.
Listen, the Patriots are going to do everything they can to play as little zone coverage as possible.
Yeah, because that doesn't work out. The Colts tried it, and they got shredded.
And in the first matchup, Pat Mahomes was 13 of 15 against the zone for nearly 200 yards, a perfect passer rating, and one of the incompletions was a drop. Like, he shredded it against this Patriots defense. Now, the secondary's playing better. Stephon Gilmore is playing extraordinary football. But there's something I want to ask you when you said deny vertical entry, because we've all talked about how, and it's not an incredibly unique point to say, they're going to bump Kelce off the line of scrimmage. Do you think they're going to do the same thing to Tyreek Hill somehow when he is not out on the edge, when he is coming either out of the backfield or in the slot? I was reading one of the game previews saying treat Tyreek Hill at the line with help over the top, similarly to Travis Kelce, to where he cannot get a free release. It seems easier said than done, and it seems like there is some downside if you don't execute that properly. But is that what you're talking about? Do you anticipate them doing that to Tyreek Hill?
No, absolutely. That's exactly what I'm talking about. When you're thinking about a player like Tyreek Hill that has that kind of speed, you absolutely have to have somebody over the top. That's why I say it has to be two-man or at a minimum man-free, and you're going to try to get those guys to get up in their faces. But Andy Reid's going to have an answer for that. Andy Reid's seen a lot of football, so he's anticipating that. So what's the next move in the chess match? It's being able to have stacks and bunches to try to get free releases for your game breakers. So I think Tyreek Hill will have some motions in there. You will see some stacks to try to get him into that secondary. But it's also having a plan once that happens, and that's why it's important that everybody's on the same page for that back seven for that Patriots defense. CC, I know you talked about this earlier in the week. There probably isn't a better secondary in the playoffs left outside of the New England Patriots. So, I mean, I look at that and say this is one of those matchups that's favorable for the Patriots in terms of what it's going to take game plan-wise to try to slow down this Chiefs offense.
I think one of the keys is you're watching the game. If you're a fan, watch where they line up. The Patriots have been very, very predictable. James Devlin, the fullback, one of the few fullbacks that we have in the league, when him and Sony Michel are on the field together, typically they're going to run the ball about 80% of the time. James White, what they have done with him is very, very predictable. He's on the field. They're going to throw the ball, and they like to throw the ball to him. Kansas City, from their predictability, do they move Kelce outside of a conventional offense and move him outside the offensive line and put him outside the numbers? They did it a couple times the first time they played, because if they're going to bump Kelce, How you can throw off that defense, which is a principal defense, is move Kelce outside. Then one of those linebackers has to be about 18 yards from the center and the line of scrimmage. That is not something they can account for. The more Kelce lines up in a conventional tight end position makes it easier for that defense. And if you're going to bracket, I'm a guy who made a living off of bracket coverage. And if I could run like Tyreek Hill, I'd still be playing. Because that is the most dangerous thing in bracket coverage is speed. Because typically, you don't have someone going all the way deep. You have intermediate, and I'm going to catch them, or I'm going to try to keep up with the player. And when you have the guy at the line of scrimmage, he's not jamming real physical. He's more trying to mirror him. So you're not preventing him from getting off the line of scrimmage. Tyreek Hill will have an impact on the game, and the only way to really be able to stop him, allow him to catch the football, but get him on the ground immediately. That's going to be one of the keys to this Patriots secondary, because I believe Andy Reid's going to dial up some stuff. He's going to be open. But can they get him on the ground and limit the yards after the catch?
We've spent all week, Chris Canty, talking about how this Patriots team, well, they've done it. They've done the talking. They want to adopt this role of underdogs somehow to give them some semblance of an edge for whatever reason. But it seems like this is a very, and it's a 3-point spread, is that what it is? Yeah, they're underdogs, but this is a very close, evenly predicted matchup between the two teams. It's now Friday before the game. We've done a ton of predicting. What happens for the players? What happens for a young guy like Patrick Mahomes? Like, just tell me as players where you guys are 2 days before a game like this.
Well, right now you're just playing the game out in your mind. You're just thinking about your assignments and how you're going to execute your responsibilities against your matchup. So I think that's what players are going through at this point right now in the week. Pretty much all the physical work has been done, especially this time of year. It's more mental, and so you're going through that exercise and trying to visualize yourself having success. I think that's where everybody's kind of going through at this point. And so when I look at this matchup for the Patriots, I think that their offense is going to have to help their defense in terms of being able to control time of possession and the complexion of the game. Like, we're talking about a plan for Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and Pat Mahomes.
Yeah.
I'll say this, there are no good answers when you're facing players that are that talented. So I think, in part, it's going to have to be the Patriots' offense protecting their defense by keeping them off the field and being able to sustain drives. Basically taking a page out of what they did offensively last week against the Los Angeles Chargers. Being able to go with some 21 personnel, 22 personnel, even bringing in an extra offensive lineman to play tight end, making it a physical game, a fist fight in a phone booth. I don't think the Patriots match up well trying to play the space game with the Chiefs offensively or defensively. So I think, again, the game plan has to be complementary: offense, special teams, and defense working in concert.
And real quick, watch how this game is officiated in the secondary. The Chiefs are going to want to clutch and grab to try to give their excellent pass rush a little extra time to get to Brady. But if the refs are letting the Chiefs do that, I fully expect the Patriots to then say, okay, what's good for the goose? And they will start running pick play after pick play after pick play. If you're going to let the defenders clutch and grab, you're probably going to let the offensive players set picks.
Jenna, the last 48 hours, it becomes important to build the monster. It becomes make sure you get the right thing to eat, and you start making commitments to your teammates, letting them know how hard I'm going to play. I got your back, bro. This is going to be one of them kind of games, man. We got to do things a little bit different. So you start building the monster to the momentum, because for most people, they don't make it to the Super Bowl. This is it. And guys start letting them know the type of energy it's going to take and the commitment one to another. So the last 48 hours become just as important as earlier in the week.
All right, good stuff. Chris, stick around. Coming up, are Jared Goff and the Rams in for a rude awakening to Superdome? That is next on First Things First. First, we're going viral with Chris Canty. Check out this hilarious moment from last night. So Lakers forward Mike Beasley tried to enter the game. You got the wrong shorts. Pants are
super
wrong.
cool bees.
And they didn't have extra shorts right there. He had to go by himself all the way back into the locker room.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, even if they had extra shorts right there, he's going to take those off. He's going to put on the game. Come on, bees. You know you're in the rotation now.
He just can't get right, boss. He just can't get right.
No, old Beasley, man. I think Beasley might have been in them trees or something before the game. California breezy. I mean, like, you just don't put on the wrong stuff for the NBA game. Now, there have been some times where I had a suit and I traveled and the pants were different, but people couldn't see. Not like that. Yeah. You know, that's just an honest mistake.
And we've seen guys have their jerseys on backwards but it's rare. Actually, we saw last year a guy forget his jersey as well.
His jersey, yeah.
Probably similar problem you're talking about with Michael Beasley.
I don't know what his problem is.
Yeah. He's in Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah, it's in Oklahoma.
If he forgot his jersey, he probably wasn't thinking he was going to play.
BYOB.
Probably wasn't thinking he was going to
play.
I know you don't know. BYO, bring your own bag.
I got you.
Bottle.
I don't.
Whatever. Let's just talk football.
If you invite, let's party. It's a party reference.
Don't know what's happening.
Ask Margie and them. They'll know.
Marcy.
What's her name?
Back to the NFC Championship game. I love that they know my friends.
Well,
last time these two played, they combined for 80 points. The Saints won, handing the Rams their first loss of the year. These teams know each other. They compete hard against each other, and according to Drew Brees, they respect each other.
They're a phenomenal team, and they had a great season. Obviously, we played them, mid-season, and it was a hard-fought game on both sides of the ball. But I think we had a feeling then that, obviously, we aspired to be in this situation, and I think we all had a feeling that they were going to be the team that we might face again, and so here we are.
All right, Kenny, what are you expecting from this one?
Well, right there, Drew Brees was spraying on the perfume and just trying to make the Los Angeles Rams feel good about themselves.
Oh, yeah, about the quarterback.
They're outstanding. They had a great season. We knew back in week 9 that it was going to be tough, and we expected to see them again at some point. No, let me tell you what's going to happen. Sean Payton and Drew Brees are going to try to cut the Rams' heart out on Sunday in that championship game because Drew Brees is looking at his career mortality, and he knows this is probably his last best chance to get to the big game. So they're going to try to take advantage of this opportunity for him, and you got to look for Sean Payton to be aggressive, pull out all the stops. Nick, I know you said earlier that you expect to see some trick plays and that the Los Angeles Rams defense is going to have to play all 4 downs because you never know when Sean Payton is going to pull out a trick play. In the Philadelphia Eagles game in the divisional round, he pulled out a fake punt on the minus 30-yard line. So, I mean, if you're willing to do it there, I mean, there's nothing saying that you probably won't be willing to do it in the NFC Championship game when the stakes are even greater. So that's what I'm expecting to see from the Saints. Aggressive play calling all 3 phases of the game. Now, in terms of what the Los Angeles Rams are going to do, they're going to try to simulate what they did against the Dallas Cowboys in being able to run the football, being able to use that offensive line, get some surge at the point of attack, and then allow Todd Gurley to get beyond the line of scrimmage and get first contact there. And then, of course, when you see Todd Gurley beyond the line of scrimmage, that's when he's best, when he has space to operate on the other side of the line of scrimmage. In order to neutralize that, I think Dennis Allen will mix up the front a little bit. You saw him use some under and some over front in their regular season matchup. He jumped into some bear looks. But ultimately, what it's going to come down to is being able to tackle. And I think that what the Los Angeles Rams try to do, Sean McVay, they force you to try to make a decision whether you're going to play base defense or whether you're going to play nickel defense because they come out in 11 personnel. If you match them and you play nickel, they're going to run the football. So they're going to force your nickel to be a solid tackler. And that's when P.J. Williams has to step up, the nickel back for the New Orleans Saints. If he's not an effective tackler when he's in those situations, when they're relying on him for run support, then it's going to be tough for that Saints defense to get the Rams offense off the field.
Jen, I think it's a great question. Who has the edge? It's not obvious. I could easily lean to the home team in the Saints with Sean Payton and Drew Brees, or I could just go on the momentum and think that the Rams are going to be able to get revenge. The way they played those last 3 quarters, the last time they came in, they're like, man, we match up well against them. If we don't get off to a slow start, I like our chances. But Drew Brees, at this point in his career, playing in the Dome with that crowd, to me, that is a tremendous edge over Jared Goff, his inexperience, and Sean McVay's inexperience, because the partnership between Sean Payton and Drew Brees, we have seen it play out. We've seen the chemistry. We know they're going to come up with some new wrinkles. I just believe it's on Sean McVay to manufacture plays to be able to protect his quarterback early. I do believe he is a big-time thrower of the football, but his confidence early, the momentum in this game early, that crowd noise early, I got to give that edge to Drew Brees and him being able to get it done. These last 2 years have been the easiest 2 years of him playing football. Why? Because he's got 2 running backs to be able to depend on. He never had that before.
And he's got, for the first time in his career, the last couple of years, or the first time in a decade, a really good defense supporting him to where when the offense does stall, the defense can bail him out. Earlier, when we were talking trick plays, I'm also talking about lining up and going for it on 4th down. Let's talk about the divisional weekend for a moment. two of the biggest plays in the Saints game. The 4th and 1 fake punt, but also 4th and 2 near the goal line, going for it and getting a touchdown. On the other side, in the Rams game, what was the biggest play of the game? Them stuffing a Dallas 4th and 1 run that Zeke couldn't get, and the Rams ended up taking the 2-score lead right after that. We know the Saints are going to go for it. They went for 18 4th downs this year. They converted 15 of them. One of the best 4th down teams in NFL history.
Wow.
And we know that that dome is going to be loud all night or all afternoon, except for in those spots, the big spots for the offense. Drew Brees is going to be able to go to the – and you got to – when you have
There's an eerie silence.
Yes.
When you got 80,000 and they're not saying anything. But your ability to be able to communicate one to another and run that offense, Nick, I think that's a great point.
And when you know the other team goes for it on 4th down, and you know Sean Payton will go for it on his own side of the 50. You know what that also means? Those spots where when we're watching games on Sunday, we're like, oh, they're not going for it. They're just trying to draw you off sides. You might actually get them to jump off sides because you have to actually be prepared for it. To me, the Saints should win. But if Ndamukong Suh can duplicate what he did in the divisional round against a banged-up Saints offensive line, because we know Aaron Donald's going to show up. If that can happen with the Rams secondary, healthiest it's been since week 1, that can neutralize their weakness at their linebacking core. And so if Suh shows up big, this could be a game that tilts in the Rams' favor.
I want to bring up something both of you touched on, and that's Drew Brees. How important is this game for his legacy to try to make it back to a second Super Bowl if that window is somewhat closed? We don't talk about his age the way we talk about Tom Brady's.
Well, as Drew Brees told me, I'm in as good a physical shape as any quarterback that's ever played this game or any quarterback playing now. I just don't talk about it. So he threw a little shade out there to Tom Brady. Drew Brees, he's got the same type of staffing. He takes care of his body. But Drew Brees' legacy, it can grow. Because when you have won 2 Super Bowls, the reason why we didn't want to Eli bench last year. Oh, man, he won 2 Super Bowls.
Nobody was saying Flacco shouldn't be benched because he got 1.
Absolutely.
And Brees, when you are going to finish first or second in every major regular season passing category, if he gets the second championship, then you start talking about, wait, like, is Brees Peyton Manning a conversation? Like, Brees Favre, does he move ahead of him? Like, I know I care about rankings much more than you do, but, like, if guys care about that stuff, the only thing missing from his resume, other than a league MVP, which he almost won this year, would be the second Super Bowl.
One thing I think is a little edge. They were one play, one miracle in Minneapolis from being in this same position last year. It's not like the Saints came from nowhere. They should have been in an NFC Championship game last year. Now they get it, and now they get it at home.
No, you're absolutely right. But going back to the legacy conversation, you're talking about the second best coaching quarterback of the last 2 decades in the National Football League, in Sean Payton and Drew Brees. It'd be a shame if they only have 1 Lombardi to show for that union.
All right, thanks, Chris. Coming up, is the Chiefs' offense too much for the Patriots to handle? That's next on First Things First. Back here, First Things First, we'll get to Brady and Mahomes in a second. But first, a little action from, Hornets and Kings rookie Miles Bridges slices through the Kings' defense before unleashing.
Man, that look, if you just glanced at it, it looks the way he dunks and reacts, it looks like Russell Westbrook. Now, I know he's not...
Oh, yeah, that little dunk where he turns and everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Stylistically and the ferocity with which he attacks the rim.
Yeah, another guy needed to develop his little jump shot a little bit.
Thunder Lakers, who said centers can't be nimble? Steven Adams with a silky smooth
Aussie, go get it! Steven Adams.
Yeah, see, he couldn't do that, Jenna, if he wasn't eating all that beef that he's eating.
Exactly right.
You didn't even know I did the accent on that one. You guys were so into the highlight. I'll do it next time around.
Or do it better, though.
Your wife said, don't do the accent, because it's not good.
That's great.
Hold on!
College hoops. You got projected NBA draft lottery pick John Morant showing off how high he can fly.
Murray State in the building. They the racers? Look at that kid. We're going to have an NBA draft lottery that goes Duke, Carolina, Murray State, Duke, Indiana.
Yeah, might be a top 5 pick.
All right, moving on to the AFC title game now. So get this. When Tom Brady played his first AFC title game, Patrick Mahomes was 6 years old. To put it another way, this will be Mahomes' 19th NFL start. This will be Brady's 39th postseason start. Mahomes is having an MVP season, his second year in the league, but Brady's playing in his 13th AFC championship. There, now that we've put it all in perspective, CC, what will be the biggest factor come Sunday? Brady's experience or Mahomes' ability?
This is really hard to make a choice because I've always been a talent-driven guy because I just believe talent, when well coached with hard work, like that's a winning formula. But Tom Brady, the experience is winning. So what I'm trying to put together, he already has. And I know that there's a certain effect on a team when you get talented players. The Minnesota Vikings, they changed a couple times. When we got Warren Moon from Houston, we assigned him as our quarterback. The team changed. Our potential, it changed because of his talent and his experience. When we got Randy Moss, drafted him in 1998, the team changed again because of his talent. He didn't have any experience, but his talent, 17 touchdowns as a rookie receiving, was profound in how it went through the roster. Randy Moss, as a wide receiver, gave the nickelback more confidence, gave him more swag because he was on the team. So for me, it's hard to decide between the two, but in this matchup, I would have to say the experience. And the experience because, man, these games are difficult. You are a nervous wreck. You have tremendous amount of negative energy that you're thinking about in these games, more so than any other game.
Even including a guy like Tom Brady?
Well, I think he's saying Brady's used to it, and so the nervous energy could affect the guy without the experience.
More, yeah.
Brady knows how he's going to feel. I saw Tom Brady in Super Bowl 52 in Minneapolis. When he came out of the locker room, on purpose, he had someone hold his helmet. And he went through gyrations and demonstrations of emotion to the crowd that I was like, I wouldn't have been able to do that because I wouldn't have been able to control that. Brady knows how he's supposed to feel. He knows how to feel home, neutral site, and on the road. The experience that he has is invaluable to the rest of the roster because he can make other guys feel comfortable. That Randy Moss effect of he's so good that he gives the nickelback swag, that's the kind of confidence when you have a quarterback. When you get in the huddle and you can't hear, and Tom Brady says, hey, guys, just relax. All right, we're getting ready to run. Let's go power right 32 blast. We getting ready to knock them off the ball. And that type of confidence goes through a team. So for me, man, I love being talented. Man, there's nothing wrong with being talented. But to have the experience that Tom Brady has, it supersedes any type of talent and how it goes through the roster.
If this game were in Gillette and Patrick Mahomes, the guy without the experience, was going to have to play the biggest game of his life in a hostile environment where he can't hear, where you know that the other team has that tangible edge, I'd go with not only the experienced quarterback, but one of the most talented to ever play. It's not like the guy with experience don't have no talent. And so Brady has a lot of talent and better experience than anybody else. But this game is not only an Arrowhead, but it's not just that Pat Mahomes is young and talented. This is prodigious talent. This is the greatest first season as a starter we have ever seen. And he is 2 wins away, he being Patrick Mahomes, from completing what would be the greatest individual quarterback season anyone's ever had. The 5 greatest seasons are Marino in '84, lost in the Super Bowl. Brady in '07, lost in the Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers in 2011, lost in the divisional round. Manning in 2013, lost in the Super Bowl. That is what is at the feet of Patrick Mahomes right now in his first year as a starter. And while he doesn't have the experience, you know who does? Andy Reid. Andy Reid, his coach, the guy who, while the defense is on the field, comes and sits next to him on the bench. Listen, Bob Sutton, you worry about that defense. I'm going to talk to my quarterback. He will be in his ear. And I think that the energy is infectious amongst his teammates, to CeCe's point. And there is one instance where a lack of experience can be an advantage in one small way. You don't know what you don't know. And if you don't know, I think there is a naivete to a degree of how big the moment is, how rare it is to get to this point in the season that could allow at home a team as talented and a quarterback as talented as Patrick Mahomes to play freer than you typically would in a game to get to the Super Bowl.
But you only have to go back to last week to see that he wasn't affected by that big stage, or at least it didn't appear to be. He had a handful of games, at least throughout the season, where you saw in the beginning he was maybe a little hesitant or off or a little nervous.
Were on the road.
Okay, so now he's at home, similar big stage, and last week he was able to do it.
Yeah, but against playoff teams, he has not played his best football. To the numbers that you talk about, Patty Holmes, it might be a perfect storm. What about when the league opened up to change the rules? That might have led to having one of the most historic seasons that we've ever seen. The reason why experience becomes important because, yeah, you don't know what you don't know, but what do you do with that emotion? I saw last week's game, and even though you couldn't see it, Patty Mahomes would tell you in the press conference that was a game like he never played. He reacted in a positive way. It's who can duplicate it. That's why Tom Brady's experience is important. You know the reason why? Because it's all great. Nick, you mentioned there's been no quarterback that plays on third down in the fourth quarter and in overtime of Super Bowl and playoff games like Tom Brady. So it's not only the experience, it's his expertise also having the experience. I didn't mention that he was great. I didn't mention that he's a pinpoint passer. I didn't mention that he has a rare running game. So that experience, it comes with other stuff. I mean, if he did want someone to whisper to him, Bill Belichick, he can whisper to me if he wants to. He can sit next to me. There's no coach that ever has more experience. I just think this is one of the unique matchups that we'll ever see in pro football or in sports. And like Nick, I do believe this. There's always a changing of the guard. Can we predict it or can we see it? A lot of times we can't see it coming. This one might be right in front of our face, and we might be able to, I had a chance to predict it. I saw it right there. Tom Brady in Arrowhead against Patty Mahomes. Yes, wouldn't be surprised at all if the Chiefs came out with a victory because you know the reason why? They got the most talented player. And that does mean something.
And we're talking about talent versus experience at the quarterback position. That's kind of the story of the two teams against each other. The Chiefs are, if I did the same thing I did against the Chargers, Pats Chiefs, who are the most talented players in the game? Chiefs are going to have 7 of the top 9 once again, but almost none of them have the experience that almost everyone on the Patriots has.
I got a kick out of the concept or the thought of Bill Belichick sitting down on the bench.
Next to Tom Brady.
Next to Tom Brady, and he goes, "This is a football game." Thanks, Coach. I'm going to kill it.
Audience got a kick of that joke.
That wasn't even a joke. That's probably exactly what would happen. Just laugh. Could you at least, we do have an audience. Can you fake that it was funny?
See? We actually have a studio audience. Now Jenna has proof her jokes don't hit.
No,
thank you, kids from
break.
LSU visiting
Back right
us.
after this. Back here, first things first, we're going viral. Yesterday, Russell Westbrook entered the arena with his adorable little guy. And then during the pregame warm-ups, Russ had his son on the court.
I thought he was going to make it.
Little people are so cute.
Look at his baby boy. And now look at what Russ does. There you go, man. This is great.
Okay, I love Russ. I'm a Russ guy.
Russ is a family man now.
I'm a Russ.
Russ's circle has been incredibly small since he came to the league. Never had no big entourage. It's always been his family, his then girlfriend, now wife. They got this baby.
I think I was just sort of poorly clouded by Colin Cowherd. Now I'm a huge Russ fan.
No, listen, Russ got stopped shooting so many damn threes, but aside from that, not much to criticize about Russell Westbrook, on or off the court.
One of many assets to being a pro athlete is the access that your kids get and what they get exposed to at a very young age. I believe it's very important to expose them to that because that's really your profession.
And if I may, Chris's 2 children who obviously grew up around football, one now Monterey is a rising star within the Minnesota Vikings organization, and your son, your older child, Duran, he's a pro football player in Canada. So they both took the experience of coming up around football.
I used to take them around. Just like that all the time.
It's awesome.
It's awesome.
One time, Duran came into one of the meetings, and Brad Johnson said, "You know when you the man?" Be like, "What? When your son sit in the meeting, don't nobody say nothing." Like, you right, bull.
Time now for your AT&T wake-up call. Boogie Cousins is expected to make his Warriors debut against the Clippers tonight. He'll also make his debut. It will be his first game since rupturing his Achilles playing for the Pelicans nearly a year ago. See, you're big on this injury thing. How long do you think it'll take Cousins to get back to full strength?
Well, I think he's looked very, very good. If you look at some of the videos, some of the shooting he's doing, some of the agility drills that he's doing, there's no rush to bring him back. I mean, you got a close to 40 games left in the regular season. I'm about 10 games into this. I want to see the Warriors, though, if they make a conscious effort to get him some good looks, to get him, because Boogie is a scorer. He ain't out there to play defense now. Boogie's out there to put the ball in the bucket and is very, very athletic. I believe about 10 game, Nick, a 10-game window to get acclimated to that pace that they play.
And I think Boogie's going to be one of the success stories of coming back from the Achilles.
Okay.
And I think he's going to play at a level that the New Orleans Pelicans, when the story surrounding them this year is when is Anthony Davis leaving, they're going to regret not biting the bullet and giving him a real contract offer to keep him there so he would have him for this 40-game playoff push and maybe the years moving forward.
Hadn't thought of that. Great point.
Back to the NFL now. Marcus Peters made some headlines after the Saints-Rams matchup, saying he and Sean Payton will have a nice bowl of gumbo together. Makes me hungry every time I read that. If the teams matched up again, both Peters and Payton said that gumbo-related tiff is now in the past. Nick, who's got the last laugh in this one?
I mean, I guess that's asking me who's going to win. I think the Saints are going to win, so I guess Sean Payton would get it. But I don't think they're going to win because they exploit Marcus Peters. This touchdown we're showing you right here is the last touchdown Marcus Peters has allowed this season. He got hurt early, played through it, didn't play up to his abilities. Since Week 10 to now, no touchdowns allowed, 2 picks, and allowing a 64 passer rating. He's back to being Marcus Peters.
Yeah, the only way that Marcus Peters loses if Teddy Ginn is get involved in this offense. They're going to have to be able to find some other targets outside of Michael Thomas. When you have Talib on the other side, I believe that the Rams secondary plays a lot better in this rematch.
All right, finally, the Saints' high-powered offense facing off against the Rams' defense. And Ndamukong Suh said the Rams are focused on stopping the Saints' elite backfield of Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram. See, whose backfield is more important on Sunday, the Saints or the Rams?
Oh, man, that's a tough one there. With C.J. Anderson emerging the last 4 weeks there when Todd Gurley was resting and what they did last week against the Dallas Cowboys, like, I didn't think the Rams, I didn't think C.J. was going to touch the ball as much. I thought Todd Gurley would be back to his healthy self. But, man, they did a great job of having a platoon system utilizing both of them. I don't think that they're going to be able to run against the Saints defense that has not given up a 100-yard rusher since when?
Week 17.
Week 17, 2017. Yeah. I mean, that's a great run defense. So Drew Brees' game has changed since they drafted Alvin Kamara. So that combination right there has really helped Drew Brees. Man, which one is more important? I believe with Jared Goff being the quarterback, and if you want to quiet a crowd down, running plays are easier to call. It's easier for the offensive line to fire off forward compared to going on a silent count, going backwards. So I'm going to lean to the Rams, even though both of these teams cannot function at the level they're used to functioning without their exceptional backfield.
I think that Saints streak is snapped this week, by the way. I think not only because Todd Gurley is great, but because a big part of that streak this year has been Sheldon Rankins. That is the one major injury from divisional weekend. Saints big space-eating, very good deep
Can
tackle.
Todd Gurley get enough carries, though?
Okay, fair. Are they going to split him and C.J. Anderson?
Yes.
It's a good question. So I'm still going to go with that prediction because I just said it. You bring up a good nuance to it. But I want to bring up Kamara not running the ball but catching the ball because the Rams' biggest weakness is their linebacking core. I do not know what matchup is a favorable one for them when Todd Gurley, whether he lines up in the backfield and then runs out, or when they put him in the slot to do the stuff that you worked on him with a year and a half ago as far as just being a true route runner. I think that is, and I know you believe, it's the biggest mismatch in this football game.
Yeah, I believe that him and Tyreek Hill, Alvin Kamara, and they are the wild card in these championship games because I don't believe there is a matchup for them on the field. As good as New England's secondary is, I don't believe they can match up with him. And as talented as the Rams are corner-wise, their safeties and their linebackers are the weak spot to that defense in coverage. So he's exceptional. I believe the best in the NFL. If I had one ball to throw, if it's contested and it's outside, I'm throwing it to Michael Thomas. If I have one slot receiver in all the NFL, of all the receivers, of everything I could have, Alvin Kamara is the guy that I'm going to pick that come out of the backfield for Drew Brees and be able to run that one route. I believe he's going to be able to win. So I believe they have a huge advantage when throwing the ball to him and getting him in space.
All right, well, it's not just the running backs on display this weekend. In a year defined by points, offense, scoring, and more points, it shouldn't come as a big surprise that the 4 best scoring offenses in the league are the 4 teams still competing for a Super Bowl this weekend. All 4 of these teams averaged over 27 points per game, with the Chiefs being one of the top 5 scoring offenses in NFL history. Nick, what do the remaining teams tell you about what it takes to be successful in the NFL?
Listen, I don't want to overreact to one championship weekend, but it should be noted these are the top 4 scoring teams in the league, and the one team that's not there that a lot of people, myself included, predicted would be there, the Chargers, they're right outside the top 4, so they would have continued that trend. But it's not just that this 2018 season has been about high-powered offenses, and we have the 4 most high-powered offenses as the 4 teams remaining. It's also been about decided schematic advantages in the coaching game. And look at the coaches who are left. You can make an argument, man, these are the 4 best coaches going right now. Certainly 4 of the best. You have Belichick, who's in the GOAT argument for coaches. You have Sean Payton, who's been as good as any coach in football for a decade. Andy Reid, who is 1 Super Bowl win away from, in my eyes, cementing himself as a Hall of Fame coach. And Sean McVay, who doesn't have the resume of the other guys, but what he's done in a very brief period of time, taking over a 4-12 team, dead last in the NFL on offense, and instantly making them a high-powered offense, and to where everyone wants to hire their Sean McVay. Like, this is we don't always get it. And maybe if Cody Parkey made that field goal, maybe we wouldn't have gotten it. There were scenarios where it wasn't going to end like this. But in a year that to me has been defined by offense and coaching, what we have left is the 4 best offenses and 4 of the very best coaches in football.
You make a great point about the coaches being paired up with the offenses. If you look at the rule changes, if you look at everything around the National Football League, for the last several years, it's been about safety. Then it was about the quarterback. It was about catching the football. Typically, all these changes are about the offensive. And I've met with Roger Goodell. I've met with Troy Vincent. The fans and their approval of this game, it's very, very important. We saw after a year where we lost some fans, we saw this year, they came back, and they came back in numbers as far as the people and what they're seeing on the field. So you can believe they're not going backwards. They're not getting ready to start changing the rules to go backwards. So it's important to build the score of the football, but you need to realize in the NFL, you can't keep teams under 17 points. So you got to score at least 21 to 24 to be able to win. New England's at the bottom of this 4 at 27. So how are you going to win games in this league? You got to be able to build a score. You got to build a score in the 20s. But what it tells me, though, more so than the scoring, each of these organizations in the last year has been very, very aggressive.
Yes.
Let's look at New England. We talked about, man, they traded away Brandon Cook. They, at mid-season, earlier in the season, they went out and got Josh Gordon. Man, that was a huge risk to try to shore up, their passing attack. The Rams, no team was bigger in free agency than them. They brought it's going to ruin their locker room. Oh, they're in the championship game. Well, let's go to the Saints. What did the Saints do? They traded at the trade deadline for Eli Apple.
And at the draft, they traded a future one
for Davenport, who was supposed to play a huge role in the game today. So when you go down all these
Chiefs
rosters,
Sammy Watkins to go along with an offense that was already really good.
What, Patty Mahomes?
Right, they traded up. They traded a future first-round pick to be able to go get
traded Alex Smith out so Patty Mahomes could take over. So yes, high scoring, but you need to be aggressive and trying to acquire players, and you have to try to win right now. That's what all 4 of these organizations have in common.
Is this good for football?
Oh, I think listen, this year has been, it could not have gone better. As far as last year, there was terrible injury luck. I understand there was the controversy surrounding the national anthem, which was polarizing, and all of a sudden it brought fair or not politics into the sport, and that angered a lot of people on both sides, right? But the other thing that happened last year was Aaron Rodgers got hurt, J.J. Watt got hurt. I'm leaving. I mean, it felt like the Odell Beckham got hurt. There was a dozen superstar players injured, done for the year. This year, the only super prominent player to get injured early was Jimmy Garoppolo. Other than that, we've had good health for our star players, and the safety combined with the catch rule, which that was the other thing. People, what is a catch? What isn't a catch? Now we know what's a catch. Damn near everything. It can frustrate you, but it has led to scoring, and it's led to simplicity. Yeah. And we're watching the game, and we know what we're seeing. I agree with C. I think this season has been as fun of a season to watch as one that I can remember.
Jenna, the only way to hurt the product is because people in the NFL, they want the product to be different than the product on Saturday in college football. If you start getting where you have prolific offenses like Oklahoma, but with no defense, then it will be a problem for the NFL. But you look at the Chiefs, there's no team that doesn't do something special from a defensive standpoint. Each one of them have groups that are really, really special. So the points are fine with the good teams. As long as the great offense doesn't come with pathetic defense, I think the product will continue to grow.
Which is why that game of the year, that 54-51 Chiefs-Rams game, that wasn't a college football game. There were 3 defensive touchdowns scored in that game. There were 6 forced turnovers. It was super high scoring, but you saw spectacular defensive plays to go along with the up and down offense.
All right, got to take a break. Coming up, is Robert Kraft right that Tom Brady is the best football player of all time? That's next. Now, first things first. Back here with Cris Canty, we're talking Patriots. It's become almost an annual ritual now to wonder if this is Brady's last ride. But at age 41, Brady's still going strong as he gets set to play in the Patriots' 8th straight AFC Championship game. When asked about the cornerstone of his franchise, Patriots owner Robert Kraft did not understate how he should be remembered.
Definitely the greatest player of all time, not just quarterback, in my opinion, because he's such a leader in the locker room. And for someone double the age of some of the players to be able to lead like that and connect like that and have the work ethic that he has, and at the same time, so pleasant to be around. It's, I'm really the luckiest guy in the world.
Cris Canty, every couple years we seem to have this conversation, and then Tom Brady comes out and plays for, a
couple more years
at the top of the NFL, top of his game. Is Tom Brady the GOAT, the greatest of all time?
Well, in terms of quarterbacks, yeah. And so if you're having a conversation of greatest players ever in the NFL, I think he has to be included in that conversation. But I don't think you can be dismissive of the accomplishments of other players in our league just because they don't play quarterback. See, we do this thing with quarterback because of the nature of position, because it has the most impact in terms of winning and losing games than any other position. We always say, okay, if you're the greatest quarterback, then you're potentially the greatest player ever. But that's dismissive of contributions from guys like Reggie White and what he did on the field, and then also off the field, being a part of the lawsuit for free agency for NFL players today. Anthony Munoz and what he meant to our game in terms of being able to have sustained excellence for over a decade, but then also the diversity aspect of it as well. You look at Jerry Rice and how he revolutionized the position of wide receiver. I mean, you could go on and on with the accomplishments of so many players in our game. Jim Brown, you brought his name up earlier in the show. I mean, you can't look past what he meant to our game. So I understand where Robert Kraft was going with his comments, but I can't necessarily get on board with saying Tom Brady is the greatest player ever. Greatest quarterback? Sure. I mean, he's got as many Super Bowl appearances as any other franchise outside of New England. He's been to 8 Super Bowls. He's been to 13 conference championship games. You can't be dismissive of what Tom Brady has accomplished, but I'm not going to sit out here and say he's the greatest player of all time because I think it's such a subjective comment.
So let's just look at our 4 major sports, right? And where there actual is like GOAT debates, and it makes sense. In hockey, there isn't one just because it's so crystal clear and obvious. It's Wayne Gretzky by a country mile over everybody else. But you could have the argument in hockey as far as because you play both ways, right? You got it. There is enough It's not as if you sit on the bench when the other team has the puck. Like, so pre-Gretzky, there was that discussion, whether it was Bobby or whomever. I'm out over my skis a bit talking about hockey history. Basketball, there's obviously been, as of late, a real debate. And pre-MJ, there was a real debate. Why? Because there's only 5 guys on the court. You play both ways. It's a real thing. There's never been this debate, really, in 2 sports. Football and baseball. Baseball, because how do you differentiate the value of Satchel Paige versus the value of Babe Ruth, right? Or Willie Mays versus Bob Gibson, whomever the pitcher versus positional player. There's greatest pitcher ever discussion and greatest positional player ever discussion. And I feel the same way about football. It is inarguable that at this point, Tom Brady's the greatest and most accomplished quarterback of all time. But how do we say what Tom Brady's greatness is versus, you mentioned Jim Brown, you mentioned Lawrence Taylor, Deion Sanders, Jerry Rice. We know the names on the list. We want to go back to the archives. Deacon Jones, I think Reggie White's a great one. We'll leave people out. Barry Sanders, if he's your running back, whomever. It's so hard to say that it's someone other than a quarterback when it comes to importance, but importance and greatness are different discussions.
I think that it's really unfair, and I'll take the Michael Jordan approach. It's really hard to compare the greatnesses of players in different eras. And this is the argument that I could make for a group of guys, that they could play in any era and be special without a question. That being Jim Brown, that being Lawrence Taylor, that being Deion Sanders. And if you want to add Tom Brady to that, I will add him to that. But this is what I will tell you. I don't believe Tom Brady would have been as good in the 60s and 70s and the 80s. And you know the reason why? Because the quarterbacks took a pounding. So if you want to start breaking down that, Mr. Kraft, since you think he is, do you think he could have done what Joe Montana? Joe Montana didn't lose any Super Bowls, but he also took a pounding in the pocket. So when you talk about leadership and these all other things, what about toughness? That used to be always one of the key ingredients. Could he play when Dan Marino played? Because Dan was sitting there and take it in the chops and be able to deliver and didn't care as long as he could get the ball to his wide receivers. So just be careful when you start going to other eras and everything. Jerry Rice would have been dominant. Drop him in any era. Jim Brown would rush for 100 yards today or 40 years ago. Now, when you go back, because the quarterback position has changed with the rules and how they protect the quarterback. So I would just say be careful. I do believe the greatest quarterback, he should get that title based on being in those 8 Super Bowls and how accurate he's become as a passer. But in any era, would Tom Brady be the best quarterback? I'm just going to slow down on that.
You always tell me that the players, especially the great players, don't do the rankings. That when you made the Hall of Fame, you looked at it as it was the end of all debates. Like
Lynn Swann told me that.
Okay.
That I would never be involved in a conversation when people would ask you, well, who's better between you, Jerry Rice, and Michael Irvin? They didn't know about Nick Wright. They didn't know I'd be on the show with Nick Wright. But in the room, we consider Jim Brown to be the greatest. So every year when I go with the greatest football players ever, we're not taking no poll. We believe Jim Brown. Jim Brown is the only man in the Hall of Fame when all the other Hall of Famers are together. When he comes in the room, we all stand up. Now, we got a lot of respect for Tom Brady. I brought up Tom Brady conversations. The Hall of Famers love Tom Brady. They think he's amazing. Joe Montana thinks he's amazing, how he's grown his game, how he's taking care of his body. So the Hall of Famers, they do have a tremendous amount of respect for Tom Brady.
You know what, CC? I think that's important to note in terms of the comparisons between the different Hall of Famers. And we always have the conversation about the story of the game. And if you can't tell the story of the game without a certain player, then they deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. I think you can make that argument, or you can bring that comparison into this conversation about whether or not Tom Brady is the GOAT. Like, can you tell the story of football, especially the last 2 decades, without Tom Brady? And the answer is no. I mean, if you look at the history of our game, can you tell the story of the NFL without Tom Brady? I believe the answer is no. There are only a few players that I would view through that same lens in terms of the story of the game and being that important or that critical to the history of football. And I think that Tom Brady is on that list of players.
One thing Brady should be able to be recognized for is the length of his career. I tell Nick all the time that Michael Jordan's the greatest basketball player, But the only reason why you can bring LeBron in the conversation is because he's been in his prime for so long. And that's worthy to be appreciated. Tom Brady has played it at such an excellent level for such a long time that no other pro has had the type of career that he's had. And that makes it special.
And it should be noted, 4 years ago today, this was a fierce debate and one that tilted towards Joe Montana. It's what Brady's accomplished in the last 4 calendar years, winning 2 Super Bowls, making a third, and being in the Final Four every single time, and adding another MVP that has given him the separation from Joe Montana to where he is
That's why
now.
I said it seems like we have a conversation, then 4 years later we have it again and again. He is just a remarkable athlete. Chris, stick around. Coming up, are Jared Goff and the Rams in for a rude awakening at the Superdome this weekend? Talk about that next on First Things First. FS1 is your destination for the day's best sports shows. Tune in. Big personalities, big stories every day. We get you started. Who gets you started? I get you started right here. First Things First. You can catch it on Monday through Friday starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern. All day, every day.
Nick, who gets us started? Jenna gets us started, Steve. What is wrong with you?
So many things.
Bounce around
I
like
could
a kid.
alphabetize what's wrong with me.
It's me.
We'll get to the Chiefs and the Pats in a minute.
Oh, no.
But first, Nuggets Bulls. Paul Millsap destroys the rim with the putback throwdown.
Underrated defender, great glue guy.
Oh, he's a
always
straight
on
OG.
a winning team.
Great fundamentals.
But you don't usually see this from him.
No, absolutely not.
This little quick bounce.
Utah's playing some good basketball now.
Right.
Hornets
Denver's
Kings. Rookie Miles Bridges slices through the Kings defense before unleashing the dunk.
Now look at this guy doing his best Russell Westbrook impersonation.
Now, Jenna, this is not something Nick normally says.
What?
He watches this highlight. He's like, Chris, look at his body. I was like, there, you've been around Jenna too long.
Yeah,
For a young NBA player to have that developed an upper body, that's a good job by him. Oh, my goodness.
College hoops. Projected NBA draft lottery pick John Morant showing off the high-flying abilities. Look
Murray
at that.
State's made butt first a couple times in the last 2 weeks, thanks to this young man.
Look at that.
Now, he's the one that jumped over the guy, right?
Yep.
Midsection around his hairline?
Yeah, exactly. That's one way to put it.
Okay.
Midsection around his hairline.
People are talking in my ears.
See, you want to play Drawing a Blank?
Oh, absolutely. It's
Here we
Friday.
go.
Let's do this.
The
It's
Rams
one of my favorite things to do.
will face off in a rematch of their Week 9 shootout. So the Saints took the first game 45-35. Chris Carter, the X Factor in Sunday's NFC Championship on Fox, shameless plug, is blank.
There's not another mismatch like this in both the games. Alvin Kamara matched up against any of the secondary of the Rams, that being safeties, that being linebackers. Linebackers are the weakness of this Rams defense. Sean Payton's ability to get him in space and to have him to be an intricate part of Drew Brees' the last few years, oh, it's critical. Alvin Kamara is a nightmare.
Going into this year, we thought the Rams defense might be as good as their offense. It didn't turn out that way. One of the reasons it didn't turn out that way is Ndamukong Suh didn't play to the level I at least thought he could. We saw him at that level in the divisional round game. If that is going to be the playoff Ndamukong Suh, he's the X factor because Aaron Donald's the best defensive player in the league. Ndamukong Suh was the best defensive player in that game last week. If he duplicates that against a banged-up Saints offensive line, that could tilt the game in the Rams' favor.
All right, moving on to the AFC Championship. When these teams squared off earlier in the season, the Patriots beat the Chiefs 43-40. We know what Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes can do, but Nick, the X factor in Sunday's rematch is blank.
The player that should scare the Kansas City Chiefs and their fans the most, it is not Tom Brady, it is not Rob Gronkowski, it is James White. If the Patriots win this football game, James White has 12 catches minimum. The James White out of the backfield against the Chiefs' slow, lumbering linebackers, that's the concern. James White, to me, is the X factor in Sunday's game.
And the Chiefs linebacker are their defenders being one of the worst in the league at covering running backs. Great point there. I'm going to go with Kansas City's running back, Damian Williams. In the last 2 meetings, New England versus Kansas City, there was a running back that played an impact in this game, running and receiving, but more importantly, receiving. Kareem Hunt had 200 yards receiving in these two contests, averaging 20 yards a catch. So I just believe in him running the ball, and he's a good enough receiver. He's not Kareem Hunt, but in running and receiving the ball, he needs to be the impact player that Andy Reid thinks he is. I think he has a big game.
All right, all four of these teams on Sunday will try to establish the ground game in the divisional round. The Patriots, Chiefs, Saints, and Rams all rushed for over 100 yards. See, the most important running back combo to their team's success is blank.
I'm going to go with Sony Michel and James White. With Rob Gronkowski, I believe he will have an impact on the game, but he's not the receiver he was. Edelman will be limited because he's typically in the slot. The combination allows this offense to be dynamic. If you take away their running game with Sony Michel, 80% of the time him and James Devlin in the backfield are going to run it. James White, when he's on the field, they're going to throw it. This is the most predictable part of New England's offense. How do they attack? I believe they become the most important, Nick.
I think Sony Michel and James White are a great answer, as evidenced by the fact I called James White the X factor, but I'm going to go with the team who's most limited at quarterback. The Rams are the only team this weekend that does not have either a first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback or the league MVP at quarterback. That means their running game is critical. C.J. Anderson and Todd Gurley, can one of them become the first player since Week 17 of 2017 to rush for 100 yards on this Saints defense? Those, I know that for the Rams to win, bless you, Todd Gurley has to be outstanding. I'm not certain that's the case with any of the other three teams, just because any of those other three quarterbacks could have monster games. So I'm going to say C.J. and Todd Gurley.
All right, not only can these teams get it done on the ground, they can also air it out. These are the top 4 scoring offenses in the league this season. So, Nick, the best remaining offense in the playoffs is blank.
When these questions are asked to us before the show, I usually go with the flow on any of them. C sometimes gets a little spicy at Deontay or Hubs, whoever's coming up with the questions. This question offended me. This is the best remaining offense in the playoffs. I don't know, the 3rd best offense in NFL history. Record-setting Kansas City Chiefs offense. This is the best remaining offense in the playoffs. There's no question here. I assume you agree with me because there's no other logical answer. Like, what are we talking about here? It's the Chiefs. It's a ridiculous question. Shouldn't have made the television show.
Best remaining offense, it's got to be Sean Payton.
I dare. No, you lying.
It's got to be Sean Payton. It's got to be Sean Payton. I'm telling you, with that crowd control, Drew Brees, that running attack, we know they're going to run the ball with those 2 running backs. Yeah, I switched it up on you. Me and Slacker, that's how we doing it. We flexible on this Friday. I'm going with the Saints because I believe that Drew Brees, he loses the MVP, but he wins it in this offseason by getting his team to the Super Bowl. Yeah.
Look at this.
Yeah, son. Don't be trying to predict what I'm going to say.
Nothing is more fun than throwing him off. That's my favorite pastime. You don't make it this far in the playoffs without a great head coach and great quarterback play, and these matchups are proof of that. So you see the best quarterback head coach combo remaining in the postseason is blank.
Now, all the coaches have an effect on their quarterback. We have Josh McDaniel, though, in New England, who's really communicating to Tom Brady. So it's not necessarily Belichick, the greatest of all time. I'm going with Patty Mahomes and Andy Reid. Nick put up some numbers earlier this week as far as Belichick, his tenure in this league. No one has scored points against him like Andy Reid.
Big red.
And Patty Mahomes is the best quarterback that we have in the NFL. That combination is the best combination remaining in the playoffs.
Unlike the previous question, you got this one exactly right. The Chiefs are in this position because of their offense, and their offense revolves around 2 people. With respect to Tyreek Hill, Damian Williams, Kareem Hunt when he was there, Travis Kelce, the 2 people are Andy Reid, who's scheming it up, and Patty Mahomes, who is delivering the football to every quadrant of the field from every arm angle imaginable. They are, in a weekend with some amazing quarterback coach combos, they are the best.
And getting Sammy Watkins back as the number 3 option in the offense, that's fairly impressive.
Early birthday present to you. I wore my Chiefs red just for you.
Thank you. Jenna Wolfe told the staff this morning, you weren't there yet, hey, guys, my birthday's coming up. She like a little kid. Oh, yeah, Jenna, when's your birthday? February 26th. Letting everybody know, 38 days early.
You're on notice.
The party.
You are on notice. I just don't want anyone to forget.
Pleasure.
I want to make sure we're all good.
Don't you worry, Jenna.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts And catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.